Welcome to CBC Windsor News at 6. I'm Meg Roberts. Thanks so much for spending part of your evening with us tonight. A fire downtown Windsor has sent multiple people to hospital as flames poured out of an apartment building earlier this morning. Plus, a local father who lost a son due to mental illness is weighing in on a federal government decision which will delay expanding medical assistance in dying from people suffering from mental illness. And historic Assumption Church has once again had to pause its restoration efforts. Millions have been raised, but there's a six-figure shortfall. Fire crews from around the city fought a dramatic fire this morning with flames shooting out of an upper floor at an apartment building on Glengarry Avenue. CBC's Dawson Chen is outside of that building to talk about what happened. Dawson, what's the latest?
Meg, roads continue to be closed around Wilton Manor. The fire department is still telling the public to stay clear of the area, and the building is partially evacuated. This 8-story, 136-unit structure belongs to the Windsor-Essex Community Housing Corporation. Firefighters responded around 10:30 this morning, finding flames and smoke pouring out of a 7th-floor balcony. Some residents were taking matters into their own hands. Occupants of the 7th floor of the building smashed windows to release smoke. One man precariously hung out of a window to break panes on the floor below. The 300 block of Glengarry Avenue filled with firefighters, police, and paramedics. An aerial tower was deployed and some residents required rescue.
This is a large-scale fire. This is one of the larger events you're going to have in the city. We're maximizing our resources. You're maximizing all our personnel, ambulance. At a scene of this magnitude, you're going to have at least a dozen trucks here. This is going to be a multiple-day investigation. For the one gentleman, he was ready to jump, but our two of our FPOs talked him back into the building, so he didn't jump. Thank God. We did not have anybody jump.
The building was evacuated. Firefighters attacked the fire from below, from inside, and from above. The fire was declared extinguished around 12:15 p.m., but Costi said the aftermath will be lengthy. Multiple residents were hospitalized for smoke inhalation. One firefighter sustained a lower body injury. Many members of the city's social services department attended to help the residents, not only those living in Wilton Manor, but the many other community housing buildings that neighbor the site.
A lot of flame, a lot of fire, a lot of smoke. It destroyed everything that was in the apartment and brought smoke again into the hallway. So please, I ask that everybody can pray for the Glengarry area because we really need it. Some of us do want to change the neighborhood. There are mental health issues here. There is drugs here, but like I said, some of us do want the neighborhood to change, though, for the better.
Dawson, that must have been so alarming for residents inside that building. Those pictures of people hanging out of their windows really paint a scary story. What is next for the people who live in this building?
Meg, we've learned that occupants of 51 units are in need of temporary shelter tonight. They're being bused to the WFCU Center. City of Windsor staff and the Red Cross are on site there. I'm told that pets are being cared for as well.
Dawson, I understand Windsor firefighters were at this same location last night. Was that related?
No, Meg, I'm told those were entirely separate incidents. Even though both involved the 7th floor of Wilton Manor, the fire on Wednesday night was in a different unit, reportedly caused by careless smoking. The fire on Thursday morning remains under investigation. The Ontario Fire Marshal's office has joined the case.
Thanks so much for that, Dawson. That's the CBC's Dawson Chen reporting live from Glengarry Avenue. The father of a man who died by suicide is questioning a decision made by the federal government. The government delayed medical assistance in dying for people suffering solely of mental illness until 2027. Legislation that has already been delayed twice. Graham Clayton knows that his son would have preferred medical assistance in dying rather than taking his own life in 2017. But it wasn't an option for the 27-year-old who battled severe mental illness. Now, several years later, Clayton's not surprised it still isn't.
It's kind of what my son predicted. He says they're going to drag their feet on this as long as they can. I think it's there's a lot of resistance to it in the medical professions. Certainly the religious groups are opposed to it. There's probably other business groups, to say nothing of this political resistance to it. He stuck around as long as he could with his social activism about the right to MAID for certain medical conditions where the individuals suffering from those conditions undergo chronic pain. In my son's case of somatoform pain, it got exponentially worse.
But if someone's suffering for years and years and years like myself, then what are you protecting them from? If they've done so much therapy, you're not protecting them, you're just confining them to pain. If the government simply chooses to continue to enact delaying tactics and arguing with the Supreme Court of Canada, et cetera, and I don't really see a definitive conclusion coming in a relatively acceptable period of time for me, and I've had enough. One day I'll simply say, Adam, you contributed to a very good cause, you did the right thing, but no one should be condemned, and no one should be as sick as you.
I absolutely feel that it is a form of discrimination to say that the type of suffering that is associated with aggressive malignancies, meaning aggressive cancers, that we're willing to deal with that, but the type of the type of suffering associated with a long-term mental health disorder, we're not. I actually think from a rights point of view, people with mental health disorders really do have a right.
The University of Windsor is not expected to increase tuition fees for domestic students. That's according to University President and Vice Chancellor Robert Gordon. This comes as the federal government has placed a limit on international student permits for the next 2 years.
We are in a situation where we're not able to increase domestic tuition given the fact that it's been frozen since 2018. And so we just can't do anything on that. We're hoping that there might be a positive response from the province to allow for more flexibility on that. But right now, we are having to kind of explore a number of different options for how we balance our budget moving forward. That being said, we have benefited from the fact that the majority of our international student population are at the graduate level, and they are exempt from these current restrictions being placed on us by the federal government.
Gordon made those comments after delivering his annual State of the University address on Wednesday. In his address, he said the university would face a budget deficit for the upcoming school year, in part due to Ottawa's cap on international study permits. He says he's created a committee to try and mitigate the financial hit to the budget. Windsor West MP Brian Massey tabled 2 petitions today in the House of Commons calling for a ceasefire in Gaza. Massey says hundreds of names on the petitions came from residents in Windsor and Essex County.
My office has been inundated with people and family members that are concerned with their friends, relatives, and sadly, we've had tragedies take place with the regards to Gaza right now, and the hostages still aren't free, and the Gaza population is very much under greater threat now.
The petition also calls for lifting the blockade at the Gaza Strip, the creation of a humanitarian corridor, and emergency humanitarian intervention. Massey is calling on all countries to meet their commitments to the Geneva Convention, international humanitarian law, and human rights to protect Israeli and Palestinian citizens. CBC has reached out to the Windsor Jewish Federation for comment. The city of Windsor is creating meadow habitats in East Windsor. It's an effort to protect animal species at risk and to promote plant life. As the CBC's Dale Molnar tells us, it's mandated by the provincial government after losing habitat due to the construction of the battery plant.
The city of Windsor is creating a meadow habitat here at Derwent Park in the Little River corridor to replace habitat lost in the area where the battery plant is being built. It's a requirement under the Endangered Species Act of Ontario.
And part of the process having that project is to also design a sort of compensation program for the impact of that project.
But the city has to use pesticides to kill off invasive trees and shrubs That has raised the concerns of residents who are already concerned about high-rise development. Nancy Tomko wrote the CBC in an email that reads in part, "It's not enough the area the buildings sit on was cleared to build these buildings. Now even more trees are being cut down as close to the river as you can get. Even more disturbing is the sign that warns people of the use and the presence of pesticides." She also took her concerns to Ward 7 Councillor Angela Marignani, who found out the pesticides are being used properly.
They're following all the mandates and protocols of using those pesticides, specifically Phragmites, which is a concern with us here in this area.
Marignani learned about the details of the project through an email from city naturalist Karen Alexander. She writes, "We use herbicides with extreme care, and we always follow the product label, which clearly defines how the product can be applied in Ontario under the Ontario Pesticide Act." She says they spray the pesticide on the stumps after trees and shrubs are cut, which keeps it from overspraying and getting into the water supply. She can't say what species at risk are being saved due to provincial regulations. She says releasing more information could expose the animals to risks, such as poachers. At this time in the project, any outreach tactic, including information provided to the media, that includes specific information about the target species and/or habitat locations, requires Ministry of Environment, Conservation and Parks, MECP, review and approval. She says they will be seeking approval to put up signs to identify the animals for education purposes, and the public will know the type of species then. Meanwhile, Tomko and another resident say their concerns have been alleviated after finding out more about the project. The city is also creating meadow habitats here at McHugh Park and at Little River Dragonfly Park along the Little River corridor, 5.17 hectares in all. Dale Molnar, CBC News, Windsor.
Work to restore Windsor's Assumption Church has been halted due to a six-figure shortfall. Its restoration coordinator says the church is seeking more than $130,000 to pay for work that has already been completed, and that any further work has to be put off for the next 6 months while they raise the money to continue.
One of our commitments is that we will not leave the parish with any debt when we finish this project. So we are putting the project on hold for a few months while we focus on the fundraising. I'm optimistic that we'll be able to raise the money that we need, but it has been always a challenge to raise money for any project. But in this case, there's so much support in the community and so much excitement, especially when we discovered who the artist was that painted the beautiful paintings in the ceilings, the 10 Apostles, one of which is a self-portrait of Guido Nincari.
Personally, I know what this church has been through for the last, I'd say, last 10 years, and I know that we're nearing the end of everything in terms of the restoration, and that is amazing. So I'm upbeat about what has happened here in the last few years. I mean, it's total night and day, and the fact that we're continuing to raise funds and not have to spend the money on fundraising, that is an amazing event in itself.
Well, if you're like me and didn't get a real shot to get outside today and enjoy the nice weather, don't worry. We still have a little more of that coming. We have your full weather forecast coming up after the break. If you're a runner, cycler, or just like getting outdoors, it's been a pretty good week for you. The CBC's Victor Paulo is here with our full weather forecast.
What a warm day it was today in Windsor, and you know what? We got more warm days in store when it comes to your Friday. Now, a couple things to look at when it comes to headlines. We do have some warmer days ahead. We do have a touch of rain that might be coming our way when it comes to your weekend. And you know what? We do have also some cooler nights as the temperatures will be dropping in the wake of all of that rainfall. Now, your average temperatures this time of year, -0.4 is your average high and -7.8 is your average low. And taking a look at rainfall amounts we're going to be expecting over the next couple of days, well, Windsor's going to be getting most of their rain on Saturday. That's we're going to be expecting around 4 millimeters of it to fall. Now, taking a look at what the temperatures will be tonight, well, it's going to be 8 degrees, a little bit of cloud cover, feeling like 4 degrees. It's almost like spring, but we're only in February. Now, taking a look at what's happening from a bird's eye view over the Windsor area, well, here's what's happening. When it comes to your overnight into tomorrow, where it's going to be a mix of sun and cloud as we had experienced today, but then here's what's going to be coming our way for Saturday. It's going to be this system as it slowly but surely will be working its way in, coming off of the northwest of where we're located, and it's going to be coming on down, but by the time it reaches us, it's going to be in the form of rain. Luckily, it's not going to be any snow because we can wait until next week when we're going to be expecting that. But when it comes to tomorrow morning, it's going to be a mix of sun and cloud. It's going to be 9 degrees, feeling like 6 over in our Windsor area for the morning. And another thing we could look at for our 3 and 7 day forecast, well, the good news is it's going to be some beautiful weather on your Friday and Saturday. And as you get closer towards Saturday and Sunday, you'll note that the temperatures are slowly but steadily starting to fall. Now, when it comes to your Saturday, your low is going to be closer to -3, similar to Sunday, and then it drops down to -4 on Monday. But by the time we get all the way down to Thursday, you can see we're expecting a bit of snow, and it's going to be feeling a lot colder. But the good news is we got warmer weather coming our way by the time our Friday and Saturday starts. So Windsor, I hope you guys have yourselves a great Friday. The good news is it's almost like as if it's spring, even almost summer-like, but we're only in February. Have a great night.
I'll take 16 degrees in February. Thanks so much for that, Victor. Stay tuned. We have more coming up after the break. province is introducing mandatory learning on the contributions of Black Canadians to history courses in grades 7, 8, and 10. The change will take effect in September of 2025. The announcement coming during Black History Month. Queen's Park reporter Lorenda Redekop has the details.
The government made the announcement in front of students at Lincoln Alexander Public School in Ajax. It's a school named after Canada's first Black Member of Parliament, who later became Ontario's Lieutenant Governor. The Education Minister credited the local MPP for the changes. She's also his parliamentary assistant.
Black students need to know their ancestry is more than slavery. It's a story of survival, resilience, and perseverance.
But she says this teaching is important for all students, not just Black students.
Black history is Canada's history. And
the Education Minister says over the next year, the government will consult with historians, educators, and the Black community on what exactly the teaching will include. It will go from pre-Confederation to more modern times.
We are committed to ensuring every child, especially Black and racialized children, that they see themselves reflected within our schools. It's long overdue.
The head of one of the teachers' unions is in favor of this, with one caveat.
I am hoping that there will be adequate training, support, professional development for the teachers who will be delivering this curriculum. It hasn't been the past practice of the government, but maybe it will be different this time.
Lecce also announced all school subjects will have a mandatory curriculum review every 5 years.
For 15 and 16 years, we had a math and science curriculum that left so many kids behind, that was not updated in a timely manner. Under this government, that will never happen again.
He says some reviews could find no changes are needed, but he wants all subjects looked at more frequently. Lorenda Redekop, CBC News, Toronto.
Bell Media's parent company announced massive layoffs today. They're slashing thousands of jobs across the country at all levels. The latest round of cuts followed the elimination of 1,300 positions last spring. Nisha Patel has the details.
It's the steepest round of job cuts at BCE in 30 years. The company will slash 4,800 jobs, a move it says will save $200 million this year. In a letter to employees, BCE's president said there would be significant reductions at all levels of the company.
We must address a number of factors in our operating environment, and that includes unsupportive federal government policies, higher interest rates and inflation, changing consumer preferences.
New rules mean big companies like Bell have to give competitors access to their high-speed fiber networks. Bell says it has spent billions of dollars building out that network, and the regulations undermine that investment.
They've allowed resellers to come in and actually price off of a wholesale rate, and therefore stopping Bell from a comfortable oligopoly. That's really Bell's objection to the government.
There were changes made at the CRTC to help those companies that are facing challenges, but at some point, companies also have to chip in. And again, they are not going bankrupt. They're still making billions of dollars. They're still a very profitable company.
It's the second major layoff since last spring, when Bell Media cut 1,300 positions. It said its news operations were losing $40 million every year. Almost 10% of today's cuts were at Bell Media. News stations such as CTV and BNN Bloomberg will be impacted, with multiple TV newscasts and other programming canceled. The company also sold off almost half of its radio stations in BC, Ontario, Quebec, and Atlantic Canada. Some analysts say for the buyers, it's an opportunity.
This kind of speaks to Bell's uncreative nature when it comes to controlling assets, that they just can't figure their way out of this.
Today, BCE reported profits sank 23% in its latest quarter compared to a year ago, though it did boost its dividend. The company also hinted it may have to cut costs even further. Nisha Patel, CBC News, Toronto.
A wildlife tunnel built under a newly twinned section of highway in Nova Scotia appears to be working. As Paul Palmater tells us, the animals are learning to take advantage of it as a safer way to get to the other side of the road.
This structure was built between the Hantsport and Falmouth exits as a measure to provide more safety to drivers on the recently twinned Highway 101. It's a wildlife underpass or tunnel, and it may have taken animals a while to figure it out.
You typically see about a year before they're confident to start using the structure. It's obviously quite foreign to them, and they need to develop a degree of comfort with it before they will successfully enter and move all the way through a structure as long as this one.
These pictures, captured by trail cameras and released by the department, show deer are using the tunnel. While people like to see deer, they can be a menace near a highway. The fields in this area are littered with a significant white-tailed deer population that now can no longer travel across the highway at this location. They are now kept off the road surface by 3 kilometers of fencing that leads down to the tunnel. Other changes have been made to try and entice animals to travel all the way through.
One of the things that we've done is add logs and rocks to naturalize the interior a bit more, make it look a little less open, a little less scary. And almost as soon as we had that completed and other construction around the site had ceased, we started to see animals successfully moving all the way through the crossing.
The fence is located near a long bend in the highway where an average of 7,600 vehicles travel every day. Prior to the highway being twinned and the fencing put in place, there were an average of 9 vehicle-wildlife collisions a year, with the majority of them being deer. But other animals are also using the tunnel.
We've also seen regular use by raccoons, porcupines, at least one fox, and there has been a coyote sniffing around, but he hasn't built up the nerve to actually go through the crossing yet, as far as we can tell.
The fencing and 50-meter-long tunnel, which has an atrium at the midpoint to allow light to come in, cost over $1 million. But it's now making for a safer section of highway for both humans and animals for decades to come. Paul Pometer, CBC News, Falmouth.
That's it for CBC Windsor News. Don't forget, for news anytime, you can go to our website at cbc.ca/Windsor. Thanks so much for tuning in. Looking forward to seeing you back here tomorrow night.